Next time. Yep, we're ready. Yep. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Troy City Council. Tonight is committee night. I would ask that you help us kick off our meetings with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As I mentioned, it's committee night, and that means we're doing things a little differently. The new council has invigorated the committee system, and so legislation will be brought forth in the individual subject matter committees for a deep dive questioning, and then we will move on to the finance following the committee meetings. So I will kick it off or shoot it over to Councilmember Nicole Struber to move forward.
Thank you, Council President. I'd like to call to order the Science and Technology Committee meeting, 5:35 p.m. Calling roll, Councilmember Struber, myself, present. Councilmember DiLorenzo, absent. Councilmember Spain-McLaren.
Present.
Also present, Council President Steele.
Present.
Councilmember Campbell-Cohen. Present. Councilmember Favreau.
Present.
Councilmember McKee.
Present.
Thank you. The ordinance that we have for science and technology is Ordinance 3. Ordinance placing a temporary 6-month moratorium on the development, construction, or establishment of battery energy storage systems, BESS, in the city of Troy. Is Paul Rogers here by chance? Not here yet. Okay. Then I welcome the administration and many different representatives to go through some questions that we have.
No.
Hi, council member. I wanted to kind of kick it off just to give you a history of where this came from and kind of what our thinking is in this process. So the proposal before you, 6-month moratorium battery energy storage system facilities. Say that 5 times. I guess first and foremost, what is also known as a BESS, BESS, large-scale facilities designed to store energy from the electrical grid, renewable sources, and discharge that energy during periods of peak demand. Do know we understand how in certain scenarios, BESS are valuable in terms of reducing that carbon footprint. I have spoken to a number of environmental organizations. They support BESS, but obviously home rule here in New York State, a number of municipalities have moved forward with various moratoriums. For me, about 6 months ago, I actually spoke to a couple folks who are familiar with BESS. NYSERDA was incentivizing various companies like Sol and others to develop these storage facilities. And I really didn't know a whole lot about the facilities, looked it up, looked at NYSERDA's website, saw that NYSERDA have various models, et cetera, in terms of legislation. Fast forward, a couple proposals did come to planning, very close to various neighborhoods, one over on Main Street, one over by McDonald's Funeral Home. an empty lot over there. And then there was one other. Some other folks that I feel are very knowledgeable about BESS said, well, if you don't have anything in your code, I would take a look at your code, you know, obviously research BESS and try to get more familiar with it, et cetera. I know that the city of Rensselaer, they have recently adopted in their code various measures to, you know, provide guidelines, safety for these facilities. Hence, fast forward, all of a sudden, I woke up to the Warwick news down in Orange County, and many of you may have seen the Times Union, which covers the Hudson Valley right now. I'm very familiar with Warwick during my Greenway days, and they literally had to battle with one of these facilities in their backyard. I'll let the chief talk about the potential dangers in terms of you can't put water to put the fires out at these facilities. You have to let them burn. Fast forward, the mayor had a number of warnings in terms of they did have to do an evacuation. They now actually have traces of hydrogen cyanide in the air through their air emission detectors. For us, and for me, and for our administration, we feel that this moratorium, the 6-month, will allow us to do the necessary research, to look at, you know, our neighborhoods to ensure if a developer wants to potentially put a BESS at their site, they are lucrative to whoever has that site to look at our city property. Quite frankly, I have a number of concerns, whether it be in terms of the fire, in terms of emission. Once again, potential pros and cons. I have looked at other municipalities who have put an indefinite moratorium, meaning they do not want any of these facilities in their municipality merely because they're so dense. So saying that, what this 6-month moratorium will allow us is to do the necessary research, to put in our code, whether it be various guidelines, whether it be various sites. I'm not sold on BESS here in the city of Troy, but I do think to just take that pause for 6 months to allow our corporation counsel's office, our code, our fire to give input to essentially put in our code the necessary guidelines, et cetera. Not every municipality is a cookie cutter piece of legislation. So saying that what Rensselaer has might not be good for Troy. We're different sizes, our demographics, our makeup, et cetera. So for me, I'm leaning on the side of caution. I don't like what I've seen in the Hudson Valley and throughout our state. I do know throughout the country, other incidents have occurred. But for me, it's environment over profit right now. It's safety over profit. We could potentially benefit to have one of these facilities at one of our city sites. I am not prone to support that at this time. The administration is, and I asked our code and our fire, but more importantly, let us develop the guidelines, let us get the various research. I do know that Green Island and Ellen McNulty, I spoke to her, they have a moratorium, and her philosophy for this, and believe me, Ellen is pro-development. If you haven't seen Green Island, it's pretty pro-development, but I did speak to Ellen, and Ellen said we're just too dense. So a lot of the municipalities who have allowed BESS, like Warwick, they have the farmland, they're not as dense, they're not as neighborhood centric. It is suggested to put these facilities not near homes. We have a lot of homes in Troy. We don't have swaths of land, et cetera, outside of, our landfill and maybe a couple other various spots. But saying that, I would ask the council to give us that 6 months. We would come back to the council. We would get that public input, have a couple of public meetings to really just gauge, what do the people of Troy think about? A lot of people, if you say BESS, they have no idea. So we would educate the public with some type of public meeting, but more importantly, do our homework in-house and develop, no matter what, even if we were to put an indefinite moratorium, we would still have in our zoning code, et cetera, the necessary safeguards, guidelines, legislation required to ensure that the safety, the quality of life of our neighborhoods are not being hindered. So that's our just background on this. That's how we feel. And we are hopeful that the council will support this. I do thank Council Member Spade McLaren for being the sponsor of the legislation. But we do hope that you give us that time to at least get in the code what's needed. And, I know you may have follow-up questions.
Yes. Are you aware of how many BESS facilities are in the state of New York right now?
We have it right here.
I mean, I have it if you don't. I was
Yeah.
just wondering if,
I know NYSERDA did blue.
so there's about 500 facilities in New York State right now. There's been a big push from New York State, as you guys know.
Right.
And do you know how many of those sites have caught fire? Period.
A few.
2.
I was going to say 3.
2. The state released guidelines in 2023 about.
May I ask, I know that there was one in Warwick. Wasn't there one in the Mohawk Valley? And then I thought that there was a third.
She said 3.
No,
Oh, I
she
said
said
2.
2.
I just said 3.
I don't remember which locations. Great question. I will look that up. But my point is not many. And in 2023, there was guidelines released from NYSERDA for the state for how best to move forward. And in your background, you mentioned a couple of jumps forward. So my first question for the administration, well, each person here for your own items, what preparation has already been done since 23 when all of this started?
Well, I was a mayor in 2023, and like I told you, 6 months ago was our first kind of interaction with even a proposal, council member. So, we've done our due diligence in terms of doing the various research, et cetera. For me personally, we need that 6 months to get the appropriate guidelines, safeguards. Like I said, the recommendations that NYSERDA are given, and believe me, I get it. The environmental orgs are pushing this. We want to reduce our carbon footprint. My job is also to ensure safety and to ensure that quality of life. Saying that, what we plan to do is have a plan of action, which is go out there, get the public's input, educate the public. If you're going to have a BESS in your backyard, you need to know what this is. You need to know potentially, if it does catch on fire, the potential safety of that BESS. But more importantly, the developers are hitting vacant lands of private lands. So of course the owner's saying, hey, we were just offered $50K a year to essentially lease our land. And that's where it's a concern, because some folks who own these lands, they probably aren't developable. And so saying that they see this lithium cell, it's not that big, they come in and they talk about obviously all their safeguards, but guess what? 3 or 2 is too many for me. And here in the city of Troy, if one of those catches on fire, I'll let the chief talk. But if that catches on fire, you're looking at half of the city being evacuated.
So I
think,
don't think
if
that's
you could follow
true.
up.
Well,
That's hyperbole.
Chief Salucci, nice to meet you all. Sorry. To speak to the number 2 or 3, whatever, throughout the state and primary, I think it's important to realize that this is fairly new, right? So these systems are incorporated into basically a Connex box, right? And over time, one of the biggest causes of fire and such is water seepage and elements and stuff getting into these and causing some sort of degradation. And you're going to see those containers over time are going to allow the elements and water and stuff like in. So you might not see a lot of that right now because they're fairly new, but as the infrastructure and everything ages, I would expect those potentially to increase.
So I have my questions separated for different departments. You have the mic, so I will stick with fire.
Sure.
The proposed ordinance does mention that the firefighters had concerns, and I was hoping you could walk us through what those concerns are. Clearly, you just gave us one, but NYSERDA does have free training available for firefighters for how best to tackle if this happens. So I was just hoping you could walk us through what those concerns are.
So, I mean, it's as firefighting and environmental and such. I mean, there is no real way to attack it, so to speak, right? A lot of these facilities have the codes that they have is early notification, which is great, but we're not going to be putting our personnel, we're not going to be opening these containers and putting our personnel in those containers, right? So if we get a notification alarm system or something that there is an event going on in one of these containers, it's stand around and let it burn. And we're going to be dumping thousands upon thousands of gallons a minute of water on it until it goes out. Our concern then is water runoff, the environment with that, with the heavy metals and such that are in the contaminated water in the runoff. And then also obviously the smoke, right? Smoke.
Wait, I
Yes.
thought you couldn't use water
Yeah, you
on
can't
a
use
battery
water.
fire.
You said mineral.
No, you use water on battery fires. What else are we going to put on it?
Not on,
No.
Huh?
no.
Oh, there was water. You're extinguishing it. You're surrounding buildings, structures, stuff like that. I mean, we have to protect those.
Okay,
Water's
so
not
not
gonna-
directly on the battery fire. You're worried about the water and the runoff
correct.
around the
Yes.
battery fire.
Mhm.
Okay. And then has the fire department gone through the free training at this point? Do you have that scheduled? Like, what does that look like?
No, we haven't. We have not. We've gone through training for like electric vehicle training, right? And it's the same thing. The state is very question on what to do with like electric vehicles. What if an electric vehicle catches fire on the thruway, right? I mean, so you have these large, what are we going to do with these vehicles? Tow companies don't want to take the vehicles because it's potential to bring them into their lots and cause another, put them in our lot and that vehicle catches fire and catches the other vehicles on fire. So obviously we're not talking about EVs right now, but we're talking about larger capacity batteries at this time. So there is it's basically a surround, protect the exposures, monitor the air quality, and evacuate appropriate distances based on wind and such like that.
Okay, thank you. My next set of questions is for code, if you don't mind. So you and your team would be responsible for permitting a BESS system, correct? And can you tell us how you view the department's level of preparedness right now to do that?
Well, so I did read about the permitting laws, but the foremost is first getting a zoning law into place and getting, basically, the zoning and the planning aspect of it first. The permitting process is more licensed electricians, working with grid and stuff like that. So the permitting process is a lot more simpler than the zoning processes, as you've read.
And in your professional opinion, what would be these, I say specific, I don't know how much research you've done so far. How would you recommend the zoning ordinances be changed to address this appropriately?
Yeah, that was the whole point of taking the time to breathe, was to look at it. I started looking at other municipalities. But I mean, it would have to be a whole, basically looking into where they could go, what type of zoning would have to be done, if there's special use permits, if they need zoning board requirement. And then as far as planning, you're talking about, vegetation, how setbacks, fencing requirements that the fire department would want. All that would be recommendation to the planning and zoning staff to obviously put together an actual model law for our zoning ordinance.
Sure. And I had the same question as the fire department about meeting with NYSERDA, because I know that they offer that for each affected department to help you with your part in the BESS process.
Yeah, once if it does pass and it's going to zoning and stuff like that, we have to get 24 hours of training every year, our guys. So we would sign up for something like this, the guys that would be in a construction department. We definitely would sign up for something like this just to get the guys out there and learn. So we had the same instance when solar came in. When solar came in, a lot of people didn't understand it. There wasn't really much in the zoning ordinance for it. So we reached out to the state at that time, and I asked the state if they could get us some training on it. Other municipalities that did the same thing, and they got some solar companies to come out, their engineers, and their engineers sat and they talked to us. And that would be something that we would do once this gets further along. I think right now we're at the beginning stages of learning about it, doing our research, looking at other municipalities. And then, it's really getting down to looking at our maps and seeing where you would have it, the setbacks. That's the biggest thing for me, is the setbacks, how far, looking to even see how far these burn, what's the air quality and what's the distance that it affects people. Because do you want a 200-foot setback or do you want a 400? Because, the first 400 feet could be really detrimental to someone's safety in the future. So that would be things that we really would have to look at. We obviously would need experts to help us out on this. Like I said, we're at the beginning phases. And, once we gather all that information, then it's bringing it back to you guys. It's bringing it to our planning and zoning board members. And so there is time frame, and I just believe that I still think that 6 months is a short time, but I think it's a lot that has to go through.
Thank you.
Yep.
Most of the rest of my questions are for planning, like the planning department. So I don't know who best that is to answer, but they go with planning.
I can
Okay.
do the best for you.
So in our current zoning ordinance, there are definitions for major and minor public utilities. It clearly does not mention batteries specifically.
Mhm.
But many experts and residents seem to think that the proposals we've seen so far would fall under a public utility minor. I wanted to hear the thoughts surrounding one or the other, where you see it going, to help guide us with how to address this.
I noticed with some of the municipalities, they have these tier 1s and tier 2s that they talk about. I think where the tier 1, you could get almost like you could see it as almost like a utility, but when you get to these tier 2, where there's banks and banks, and I think that's where most people's concerns are, is those are the ones that you really want to have, some thought into. Like I said, setbacks. Our zoning ordinance doesn't really give setbacks to things like this. They do with structures and accessory structures, but this is, a little bit different than that. It's a little bit different than a structure fire. You know what I mean? To where the building code, obviously, there's a lot. They talk a lot about structures. The building code on these, they talk more about like safety and stuff like that. To where we're looking at, the surrounding neighborhoods too as well.
Sure.
And don't forget too, these do have some noise levels to them too. So that's another thing. We have to see like the level of tiers, like what is the radiation of noise? Because, and also I noticed too, that they say that if overhead utilities is near a property, they don't suggest them be there. It should be where there's underground utilities. So there's certain parts of the cities that have overhead utilities. There are certain parts that don't. So that is another thing that we would have to map out and look and really see where the zoning really fits. Because, National Grid is not going to come and put the poles in the ground in certain neighborhoods. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Yeah.
And then my next questions are about how the departments, you see the departments being affected with your workflow, with the number of staff that you have. There have been 2 different companies who have reached out so far. And of course, you have to go through the permitting and the code inspections and the fire training. So clearly this affects personnel as well. Can you speak to how you see it affecting personnel in your department?
I mean, if it's really, like I said, once we, the heavy part of this is the research and getting us to the end of where you see it going and permits go out, and maybe it does become successful. I mean, as far as personnel, that is something that, we'll take care of it when we do the permitting process,
Council member, are you? I just
There we go.
turned it on. I just turned it on. It takes a couple seconds. Are you asking the permitting process that impact on the employee, or more developing the standards, guidelines, training, et cetera?
The
Or both.
workload.
Oh, the
So,
workload.
yeah.
I mean, the workload, no.
No,
I
it
mean,
wouldn't,
that's-
because
no,
here's the thing,
no.
every lot could have a building put on it. Obviously, a building would take a whole lot more, because now you got foundations, you have site work, you have water runoff, you have CSOs, you have everything. This would, it would just be like developing on a site,
Okay.
we're here for it, so.
All right. That is the end of the questions I had for you guys. Do you guys have anything else for us?
Just, what we're asking here is a pause. Let our folks in the various departments, get the knowledge, the potential training, but more get the education that can arm us to protect our residents on all fronts, whether it be the safety, the public safety, whether it be quality of life, whether it be noise control. I did look at the city of Rensselaer's. Once again, they kind of took NYSERDA's and put into their code. Our code, we definitely want more setbacks, et cetera. But like I said, every municipality is different. Different demographics, different lots, et cetera. So what this 6 months will allow us to do is go out to the public, educate, and then obviously get our corp counsel's office to work with the various departments to put those zoning, the guidelines, special use permit, various areas, maybe hone it into certain areas, maybe not. I'm not ruling out a full-fledged ban, but I'm not there yet. We need to take a pause before these are fast-tracked through. And very quickly, why I asked for this moratorium, we did not know, meaning the administration, how far along one of the proposals were, and it was moving along quite fast. And so we just said, wait a minute, let's take a pause here. Let's us get the appropriate guidelines, safety, zoning, planning, all in our code that's necessary just to protect our residents. So
to summarize from what I'm hearing, you as the administration do plan to complete these things in the next 6 months. So
that's
the
the goal.
trainings and okay.
That's the goal. Well, the training, obviously, that would be part of it either way, but developing the guidelines, we would have to, the code, come back to the council, obviously. So our goal is to come back to the council within 6 months with the various codes, planning, zoning updates in our code legislation to act on.
Thank you.
Also, one other thing on that one is also there may be questions from the planning board members as well, because to put this in the law, they would have to meet first and pass it before it comes to the council. So they may have a lot of questions. They may have research too. So Like I said, it's going to take some time, and hopefully, in 6 months, we can come back with an update and see how far we've gone along.
Chair?
I had one follow-up because you did mention that one of the proposals was pretty far along, and I wanted to ask about the priority level of getting this done and trying to stick to that 6 months, because there is a proposal that is in the works, which could bring a lot of economic activity to Troy. It can lower the cost of electric for residents, and a lot of residents are hurting in that way right now. So I'm trying to understand the priority level of getting our ducks in a row versus not losing out on the potential development of this in Troy.
Listen, I'm all for economic development. All of you know, I'm also for protecting our residents and ensuring also that balance between economic development, environmental protection, and public safety. Public safety to me outweighs everything. I think there's a lot of unknowns with the BESS. Regarding reducing the electric, I know BESS takes it off the grid, reduces that carbon footprint, but I don't know if it actually reduces the residents' electric bill.
Yep. I'm hoping that somebody from ESRG is here to speak next to get more into the weeds on that. But having done the research on the best projects, for everybody's knowledge, you guys and elsewhere,
Sure.
the goal of them is, yes, you take the electric during low times to store it, but then you can use it during high times to reduce cost. So specifically in Troy for the summertime, when everybody's running 3 air conditioners because it's hot, it can help to support the grid while lowering the prices.
And I get that. My objective here is to ensure that the people of Troy are safe. I certainly don't want any fear mongering, et cetera, but at the same time, there truly are a lot of unknowns. Like I said, the folks who are placing these, they are getting incentives, et cetera. I know the whole reducing the carbon footprint, but at the same time, we have to ensure that they're not in the backyards of folks, that we are looking at where these are placed. In terms of fast tracking, we're not going to allow that. That's why we're asking for this 6-month moratorium. I think, like I said, not just to repeat myself, there are a lot of unknowns, a lot of benefits. I'm hearing you, but at the same time, a lot of unknowns. And what happened in Warwick, I will not allow to happen in the city of Troy. It did happen 3 times in Warwick. I do have concerns. The chief actually and the deputy chief or assistant chief did approach me and actually said one of the other concerns is the aging of these facilities. Many of these are long-term leases, 10, 20, 30 years. What are these going to look like in 15 years, 10 years if they're not kept up to date? And we do know there's guidelines, there's rules, regs, et cetera. But in terms of keeping that infrastructure intact, there's also money involved. And we all know what happens down the road, 9, 10, 11 years down the road, sometimes with private infrastructure. If it's on our land, we can obviously monitor it more. We can have those safeguards. When it's on private land, it's a true concern. That's what the chief actually, we were meeting earlier today, is those private leases, those private sales, et cetera. So we're on the same page in terms of there's true benefits, but right now, the city of Troy, we have to just take a pause, more education. Really, our planning board, the majority of them do not know a lot about BESS. I do have private folks actually contacted me, private developers saying, you definitely want to pause on this right now. One who was approached by a company who could have gotten very lucrative dollars with a long-term lease, telling us you definitely need to get something in your code, et cetera, to protect the residents of Troy. So that's all we're asking, 6-month pause moratorium.
So if we were to move forward with the 6-month moratorium,
Mhm.
could we count on updates
Absolutely.
every 2 months so that we understand how it's progressing?
Sure, of course. Call meeting, we'll come in. Yep.
All right, thank you.
Yep, thanks.
I think you had a question, Chair.
It was answered. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is Paul Rogers here by chance? Okay. With that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second? Am I allowed to second my own motion?
Yeah.
Okay. Science and Technology is adjourned. Thank you.
Our next committee is the Law Committee, chaired by Councilmember McLaren.
So I will call the Law Committee to order at 6:10 PM. Present is myself, Council Member McKee, present, Council Member Campbell Cohen. Present. All members are present. We also have ex officio member Council President Steele.
Present.
And here tonight, we also have Council Member Struber, Council Member Fabro.
President.
And I'll also note that we have Corporation Counsel Rick Morrissey here. So the lawsuit that we are considering tonight, in ordinance 2, pretty straightforward.
Yes.
Okay, so their claim of damages is higher than what we are actually settling on.
More than twice as.
Okay, yeah, and no injury, so it's a pretty straightforward claim. So my questions about that are actually none, other than what I just asked. I do want to ask about our FOIL process and the issues that have come to light recently that the council has been made aware of, and how those are being addressed.
So can you be more specific as to which issues you're talking about?
The appeals that you have decided on, and then the information has not been
So my understanding is that the records access officer has been in touch. These are primarily appeals by Mr. Salka, I think, the ones that the council has been made aware of.
yes.
Okay, and I think the records access officer, my understanding is that he was directly in contact with Mr. Salka and has been responding to him with respect to the decided appeals.
Okay.
I have more appeals to decide, I think, too. Okay. I mean,
Okay.
I-
For that person or for other?
For that person.
Okay. And do we know, I mean, we haven't been made aware of other complaints, but have there been other instances where this has been an issue, or is it just with Mr. Salka?
I am not aware of that.
Okay.
I mean, I deal with the appeals as they come in. There was a period of time when I became ill and
Yeah.
frankly had too
Gotcha.
much on my plate.
Yeah.
So I fell behind on the appeals. I
Mhm.
admit that. However,
But it sounds
I
like,
haven't really seen any other appeals lately,
okay,
or at least, I mean, periodically you get some, someone challenges a denial, which for whatever basis.
okay.
Sometimes I grant it, sometimes I don't.
But as far as you're aware now, the timelines with which the records officer has to respond, they're identifying themselves, things like that are not an issue
Yeah, I don't
at
know
this
that
point.
I haven't agreed with the appellant on some of the issues
Okay.
that have been, that he has identified.
Mhm.
I don't know that the records access officer needs to have his or her name there as long as there's access
Right.
through our FOIL system. I did not agree that the redactions could not be done by whiteout as opposed to blackout.
Okay.
I mean, I felt that was, especially since the redactions being complained of were perfectly obvious. But I've asked the records access officer to address the parts of the appeal where I have granted
Okay.
access to records. I believe he is doing so.
Okay.
I believe I don't know that he's fully up to date yet, but I believe, there was a backlog.
Okay. All right. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay.
Chair,
Oh, yes. Council President.
thank you. Can you speak to why it has been such a lengthy process to just obtain records that exist? Why the delay has been so, in my mind, egregious?
I don't know that every request there has been an egregious delay. There have been some delays that,
We're talking months and months, which,
well, I mean, some requests were answered and the applicant was not satisfied with the response, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the response was inadequate or insufficient. And I'm not aware of all the exact timelines here, so. But when when there is an appeal and I believe that the applicant or the requester is entitled to the records, I grant.
thank you.
And I did mention part of the delay might be that I fell behind in the appeals process itself.
We're glad you're feeling better.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm glad I'm feeling better too.
I bet. Do we have any other questions for Corporation Counsel? No? Okay. Well, I thank you for coming and for your information, and I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay. We are adjourned. Thank you.
And our next committee is Public Safety, chaired by Councilmember McKee.
Can the Chief DeWolf and Chief Barker please take a seat?
I think she may be doing it as well, but yes, it does go to her.
Hello.
My assistant chief. I thought it was pretty loud.
I thought you were too.
I just wanted to take this opportunity to, let's see. This is my assistant chief, Adam Mason, for anybody that hasn't met him. This is my deputy chief,
Welcome.
Stephen Barker. So we're kind of like the three musketeers of the TPD. So thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome, chiefs. So we'll call to order the Public Safety Committee at 6:20. I'll take a roll call. Councilmember McKee, present. Oh, Councilmember Struber,
Present.
Councilmember Favreau,
Present.
Councilmember Di Lorenzo, absent. Councilmember Spain McLaren,
Present.
Councilmember Campbell Cohen. Present. Council President Steele.
Present.
Great. Okay, the Public Safety Committee is meeting tonight to discuss Resolution 18, authorizing the mayor to enter into an intermunicipal agreement with the town of Colony for mutual provision of police tactical team services. Chief, This is, as you know, new to many of us sitting on the council. So we'd like to delve into this agreement to get a clear understanding of how it works. Please start out by briefly describing Troy's tactical team, discuss its purpose, when it was formed, how it is funded, a little bit about the training, the number of officers on the team, and special equipment used, the advantages that it provides to the police department, and how our team complements Colony's team. In other words, same number of officers, same equipment, or not.
Okay. Yeah, so the team has been in formation for in excess of 25 years. I was a member of the team myself from 2003 through 2010. I'm actually going to hand the mic over to my deputy chief because it falls under his command and he has all the information that you're asking for, rather than trying to dig for it in my brain.
Well, good evening, everybody, for those we haven't met yet. But so our emergency response team is our tactical services team. We have 16 members. It's an ancillary duty. So these members are part of other operations. They may work in patrol or detective bureau, and then they attend these special trainings. They get these special certifications, and then they're expected to act in these roles. Typically, a lot of the police work we do in the city is unknown risk. If we're getting called to a certain area for a certain call, patrols are going for an unknown risk. Typically, we would engage or activate the emergency response team for a known risk. If we're serving a high-risk search warrant, if there's weapons involved, if the individual that we're seeking has a violent past, or there's other considerations that would lead to the activation of that team. The team follows national best practices. It's certified at the state level, so there's expectations of how they operate. In addition, if that team's activated, it has to go through one of the three chiefs. Unless there's something incredibly exigent, perhaps maybe an active shooter or something of that nature, they might self-deploy. But realistically, if it's something that exigent, everyone on the street is just going anyway, and we would collect ourselves and activate an emergency response team at another time or a later date. We had 30 activations in 2025. What an activation would consist of is, like I said, if there's a high-risk search warrant, if we're conducting a search warrant in our pre-planning, it has to meet a certain need. We put it through a matrix that is developed at a national standards of best practices level. So if there's certain dangers that are expected, then we would potentially not use regular patrol personnel or detectives to serve that search warrant. Typically, that's, like I said, weapons involvement or previous violence, convicted violence of the offender or the suspect that we're looking for. Okay. Once the team is activated, then they develop their pre-operations planning to survey the residence or the target location and develop information to determine how best to approach the scenario. I'll say that sometimes what we see in the modern media is not accurate with how our team performs. Typically, most of our tactics are getting to the residents, establishing communication, then having people come out to us. I think some people, when we talk about tactical teams or SWAT, you assume there's explosions at the door and everybody's running in the house to, as quickly as possible, place everyone in custody. That's just not so, especially with our team. Typically, communication is made. That's why a lot of the times when you see videos of the teams in action, it's from outside with vehicles with loudspeakers, and we're trying to establish contact with people in the house to get them out to us, because what are we most concerned with is typically guns, and it's hard to destroy a gun in a residence. So if we can get the person in custody.
I just want to interrupt for 1 second. So explain like the breach and hold, because people may see, hey, but I did see them break this door in.
Yeah, so there's, without getting too deep into the specific tactics that we might use, a lot of times we have devices, whether it's the little robots you see or just a really loud speaker or drones. If we can gain access to a residence, break a window or open a door from the outside, then instead of sending people inside to go confront someone, we can just put some sort of technology in to go in and start communicating with the individuals inside. Hey, we're here, we're not leaving. We have an order signed by a judge. We need to either talk to you or see you or place you in custody. And that's typically the approach we use. As I mentioned, we had 30 activations in Troy in 2025. In 7 of those instances, we've involved members or resources from the Colony Police Department to come and assist us. In 1 instance, we had Albany Police come over and assist. In 1 instance, we had New York State's SORT team, which is the New York State Police's SWAT group, to come in and assist. If we're making a request from another agency, it's for one of 2 things. It's either for resources, for some sort of equipment, whether it's potentially a protective vehicle or shielding or some of that technology I mentioned, whether it's a drone or like a robot with a camera on it, or it's for personnel. If the building that we're going to is multiple apartments, if there's multiple exposures, if it's just what is becoming a more major operation, if maybe we need to facilitate it to different residences at once, we may need additional personnel. So then we make those requests in advance. The reason we developed this relationship with Colony, or this legal relationship, is those teams have been close from the very beginning. They've trained from the very beginning. They're familiar with each other, and they have the same perspective on how tactical operations should go. And that is probably arguably the most important aspect of that relationship, because we don't want that more actionable or running through a door in most circumstances. And Colony feels the same way. And so we're aligned in that fashion so we can develop this relationship. Along with training together, you become familiar with people. So you operate with aligned vision, but you expect people to be where they're going to be. We found that to be truthful with Colony. So then since 2012, at least, we've developed this relationship with Colony legally, which is realistically, if we're over here, we own the Troy officers, Colony owns the Colony officers. If we go to Colony, we own the Troy officers, Colony owns the Colony officers. And so now you may have a chain of command at the scene where Colony owns their incident. Obviously, we'll respond to their directives as long as we feel it's moral and constitutional, we'll act in that manner. But it provides for Troy supervision over there. There's still a Troy supervisor at the scene.
Great, thank you. That was very thorough. You train with each other?
Yeah, so from the very beginning, since the most senior guys are on the team, they've been training just because Troy's team, in my understanding, established a few years prior. Colony was looking to gain a team. They looked locally. They found some experience on our side. So that's how the relationship began. But since then, we realized that we're so close, and it's really, I have to rely back on that. It's the same vision, because you don't find that all across all policing in the approach. The teams have just grown closer and closer. And so they train multiple times a year together. So there's shared expectations.
So there's not a lot of turnover in this division? Or?
No, like I said, it's an ancillary duty. So you might see different officers amongst the department bounce around. They might be in patrol this year and a few years in the Detective Bureau of Community Services. This is an ancillary duty that they certainly take it very seriously, but we take it very seriously. Obviously, this is the highest liability stuff that we may engage with, and the most dangerous, because it's the known risk scenarios. So there's a commitment to the team on their end. Obviously, they're benefited by some better equipment and some better training, but there's expectations on the department end. And it's not all a cash game, but we're putting a lot of money into developing you. We're going to need you to act in these scenarios and be available to us. And so there's a mutual understanding there. So no, not a lot of turnover.
So do you have the same equipment, or does Colony have different equipment than you do that you can?
It seems to bounce back and forth a little
economies of
bit.
Scale with, or whatever.
Sure. The most notable is some sort of protective vehicle. I mentioned, and obviously that it's sometime a hot topic. Our tactics are very much so that we go to a residence, we announce ourselves that we're sitting out front, and wait for you to come out to us in most circumstances. That can't be done in our normal patrol cars, or it shouldn't be done in our more normal patrol cars.
I've seen it in
Yeah.
action.
And so Colony has a protective vehicle. And so then many times that's the request that we're making to them, additional personnel trained to use it. As for the more minutia equipment, whether it's a drone or a robot, sometimes we'll get a new device in a grant funded year, or we put together a project that might be slightly better than what Albany or Colony has. And so then we can use that. And then in a subsequent year, they may get something newer. So there's some other equipment considerations, but mostly it's vehicle based and personnel based.
Okay. And how was this funded originally, or how's it continued to be funded?
Normal
have any
budgetary
sense of the
funds
cost?
for
I'm
the
sorry.
normal budgetary funds for the most part.
Okay.
I think the line's typically 15,000 or so.
Yeah, it's not a heavy lift, really, considering the amount of work that they do. And like you said, it's an ancillary duty, so it's an extra burden on them, really. I mean, they volunteer to do it, so I'm grateful for that.
Okay.
Special projects are sometimes funded state grant level. Now, there's obviously extra requirements there, and we have to be approved for them, but that's typically long-term vision of, hey, we really like this capability. Well, we need to appeal to the state.
Okay.
And as far as just to go on a little bit about how professional the team is, I mean, they're regularly recognized by New York State. They go out to Oriskany and they help out there and they teach. Some of them are master instructors out there, so they're teaching other departments across the state. And like I said, they're always receiving accolades from the instructors out there, from the people that run the State Preparedness Center, which is pretty good, which assists us also in sometimes getting grants because they see that we're helping out.
So mostly state grants, any
Yeah,
federal
often,
Department
yeah.
of Justice or,
No,
it's-
any federal grants are usually, if anything, pass through the state. Most come through the Department of Homeland Security.
okay, thank you.
Through the State Department of Homeland Security.
Thank you for that distinction. Let's see. So over the past 10 years, the agreement, how often I know you said you had 30, the 30 actions this past year, did that include Colony or
7 times we
7 times?
re-
Okay. Oh, you
reached
said-
out to Colony for their assistance.
Mhm.
One other time for Albany, one other time for New York State's team.
Okay, and would 7 be about a typical?
I'd say
Average.
activations have not gone up drastically, but
Mhm.
they typically rise year over year. But that's a pretty normal assistance from
Yeah,
Colony.
in the 30 overall is about normal too, really.
Okay.
I mean, some years are more than others, but it hasn't been too bad. So.
Great. You said that I was going to ask about what circumstances, and you pretty much define that as violent acts, weapons.
Yeah, a hostage situation, something
Because that's in the
barricaded.
agreement, hostage situations and barricaded suspects. Have you ever had hostage situations?
Yes. Stewart's in South Troy and Vandenberg Ave
Right,
Yeah, just a couple of years ago.
right.
is the
I do
most
remember
recent.
that.
I'm sure there was
Mhm.
some prior to my time, but
Okay. And what steps are taken and how do you make the decision? What factors play into your decision when an incident occurs, requesting the use of our tactical team or responding to a request by Colony? For instance, in the most recent January 15th raids in Troy, we assume that Troy was the requesting agency and Colony was on site, right?
which was January 15th, South Troy and 4th
Down
Street.
in 4th Street.
It was a New York State police operation. They requested our team for that.
Okay, and so how does that work? They come in and request, do
They
they?
brief our team and our leadership.
There were
regard-
multiple dwellings hit that day, so they didn't have enough personnel because they were hitting places simultaneously.
Okay,
So we were tasked with the one that was on 4th Street. They were tasked with one that was in a different part of the city.
In order to activate that team, even for another agency's operation, it would need to fulfill the requirements that we have to activate our own team if it were our case. And so
Okay.
state police's investigation met and exceeded in great depth.
so they just come in and say, we've done some undercover work or whatever, and there's this house on 4th Street that we want to.
Yeah, I mean, in sum and substance, but it's a little bit
Mhm.
more
Yeah.
intricate than that. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
there's meetings and you
So
go,
there's a preparation time.
Correct.
You know, they give you some time to
Yeah.
work this out.
For that one, I can speak to what's been released by the state police since. There was multiple illegal gun purchases and storage occurring across multiple sites. So that was part of the briefing that we received initially. It met our standards, and so we participated.
And do you know how many arrests took place with regard to that?
3, I think, at least. I'm aware of
Yeah.
3.
well, one of the main targets was that
Yeah.
address
At 4th?
at 4th
Yeah.
Street. Yeah,
Okay.
one of their main targets. I mean, it wasn't ours, it was their case, but
Do you know if it happened at the same time or was it seemed to me? It was
yeah,
the
yeah,
day-
it happened,
it
it
did.
happened while they were there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, and just to be clear, Chief, are you the decision maker or have you delegated it to?
Yeah, it's,
Who would make the final decision to?
I would in many circumstances, but many times it's the deputy chief that makes it. Sometimes it's the assistant chief, but they have my authority to do that.
Uh, this came up in the agreement. Has there ever been a death, injury, or disability of an officer for services rendered under the agreement? And if so, if any investigations followed or inquiries were made, did all parties involved cooperate? Was there any?
To the first question, no. To the second question, there was an investigation. We were called to Cohoes. It might have been 6 months ago or so. State police had an operation with it was a domestic situation, firearms involved. We were on the scene until state police's team could get there. When state police team arrived, they continued the operation that ended up exchanging gunfire with the suspect. And so state police, attorney generals, everyone were involved in that investigation. And then we participated and submitted our officers to the process to the extent of the colony wasn't involved, but we recognize that investigations of force incidents occur and it's our duty to participate.
Mhm. And that hasn't been a problem. Okay, and it's startling to see these events take place. I saw one a couple months ago in the broad daylight, and I was just driving down 2nd Street, and there was an incident on 3rd, and I could see the vehicle and the officers, and it was really startling, and in a tight-knit neighborhood that we have. So as I'm sure you're aware, with what's going on in Minneapolis, there's a heightened awareness among the public about law enforcement tactics and concerns about the amount of force used to quell peaceful protesters. These anxieties have permeated into the public's heightened concerns about policing in general and the tactics used.
Well, I have to say, I feel pretty good about any demonstration we've had here and the way
Yeah.
we've conducted ourselves and the demonstrators have, and it's usually been very amicable. So,
I know, I'm aware. I've been probably at those demonstrations. But I'm sure, I hope you are aware, and I'm sure you are aware that there's a lot of, tension out there because of what's going on. People are seeing on the TV or through social media.
absolutely. No, I get it.
These horrific visuals coming out of Minneapolis, and people are frightened. But thank you for the work you do. I just have a couple more, and then I think my colleagues may have some questions. So with regard to the January 15th event, at least on 4th Street, there's been complaints from the neighbors on the block concerned about their safety. And they're questioning the amount of force that was used and the implementation of the special equipment. I think a battering ram, is that what you call it? That vehicle?
Yeah.
Likely. Yep.
Flash bang, yeah.
Yep.
And, the police are, you have riot gear on and assault rifles and
Protective equipment.
protective equipment, which I understand. But we did get complaints from some of the neighbors. They were frightened. And I guess the question is, I know you can't, prior to these events, you can't notify the neighbors, but after the event, is there any way you can go back and talk to the neighbors and let them know what happened and just kind of give them some reassurance that
We could
everything's
we could
okay.
probably do it in like a neighborhood meeting or something like that. I mean, if that neighborhood group wanted to have a meeting and get some more explanation and stuff. And we usually have some kind of a release. I mean, in most cases, if it's our incident, then we have a release out pretty quickly. It's put out on social media, out to the news and the city's website too. In this case, I think it was only delayed by maybe a day, right? That it was, if that, that there was information put out about.
I wonder if you could put flyers on people's doors, on the block, or, I mean, you must have some kind of a communications division or,
Well, that's what.
I mean,
the
social
community
media,
police unit
a lot
would-
of people use that, but some
Yeah.
people don't, I just started, So,
It's food for thought.
yeah, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And I think
Chair.
that might be it for me.
I have
Um,
one.
Please go ahead, council member.
Thank you all for being here. Residents also reached out to me about the January 15th events, and I had a question about procedure if children are known to live in the home that is the target of the emergency response team. Are there any different considerations, different processes that you need to take if children are known to live in the home?
So yes, they would be, it's part of the planning process. And if it's possible and safe to take that into account to do the operation at a specific time that we know the children aren't there, then that's something that's taken into consideration. And a lot of times is what you do is when you see a daytime operation, which has with it some downfalls, obviously the ability to be detected. You're not necessarily surprising people, but with the kids there, it's potentially a safety concern that we would take into consideration. For this one, again, just speaking for the 4th Street, speaking to what has been released, the individuals that the state police and our teams were seeking were dealing in many, many illegal firearms. And so that has to be balanced with knowing that our tactic is typically to make communication from the outside, not to rush a door and run into all the bedrooms. We can safely get those children out, get them with responsible people to care for them until the situation resolved, and still get the potential suspect into custody. But the short answer is yes, it's a consideration as part of the pre-planning. Children, animals, other people, whether it's elderly or just family members that are uninvolved, adjacent apartments that have no involvement whatsoever. That's all part of the pre-planning.
Thank you.
Thank you. And
Sure.
council member Devereaux?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for being here this evening. Being the representative for District 5, I heard a number of residents reach out to me questioning what was happening on Alder Ave. And maybe I missed this earlier. Can you please explain, was this an initiative from the Troy Police or was this a state initiative?
New York State.
That's the
New
same
York
case.
State.
Yep.
And so most of the officers that were on site there were mostly New York State, or was that also Colony?
Alder Ave was mostly the state police's team.
Okay. And you had mentioned the different agencies that you work with locally. Are there any federal agencies that you're currently working with?
We have task force officers with the DEA and the FBI.
Okay, thank you.
No
And-
ice?
No ice.
Thank
We used to
you.
have one with the ATF, but we don't anymore. But
Mhm.
the FBI and the DEA have been longstanding relationships that have been in place for decades.
And I think my last question for you guys is, what is a Bearcat and what value does it hold?
It's a protective vehicle. It's certainly been the topic of much discussion across policing nationally. What it is a vehicle that protects the occupants from gunfire. What people attribute to it is all the different accessories that someone can put on a Bearcat, like the military puts on massive rifles and things mounted to the armored vehicle. The vehicles that we use from these other agencies have no firepower on them. They are protective vehicles that typically have loudspeakers and drive up in front of the house. And then officers sit inside them, whether it's with the crisis negotiation team or it's our tactical officers to communicate into. It's obviously also available for rescue type situations where it's an active shooter or an officer down, where they could go in, collect the individual that's injured, put them in the car and retreat from the gunfire.
Okay, thank you.
Bearcat just being one brand, like there's all other brands, but protective vehicle.
And we've seen those in Troy. I think I've seen those
Yeah.
in Troy.
Yeah, Colony
multiple
has
times.
one.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
Albany does as well.
And
Yeah.
Do we just have one or?
We
We
don't,
don't.
we purchased one. It's still not here. We typically use Albany or FBI or Colony if it's available. There's been some operations where we've had none available and you modify your operation to a certain extent and so the rest of it, you
Hope for the
go
best.
with God.
Okay, thank you. My last question is actually for the administration, probably for Rick, if he was still available. So the current resolution as presented to us is asking us to sign this retroactive to January 1st, 2025. Can you clarify the dates that this is actually for? Because in doing a little research, we found that a resolution had passed January 23rd of 2025, and I believe it expired in December.
So I commend you on your research. That's the way it came to me from the secretary of whoever was in Colony. Maybe it was, I think she might be the secretary to the Peter Crummy. And I just decided to let it go. It doesn't change anything. We already had an agreement for 25. That agreement has expired. This one is for 26, essentially.
And the last one was for only a year, but this one will be for 2 years, correct?
It is, I think it expires on 12/31/26.
That's what it says,
Yeah.
but then some of the language says a 2-year contract.
Right, so because of the retroactive,
Okay.
they put those clauses in there. I could have gone back to them and said, hey, why don't we change this? We already have one and stuff like that. But since it was only going to go to the end of 26 anyways, and normally they're typically 1-year agreements, I didn't see any harm in letting it go forward.
And with the raids happening last week, the two of them, and us not having a contract, is there any liability that the city would have for not cooperating under contract?
So the raid last week, my understanding was with the state police team. And I don't think we have a written agreement with the state police.
Colony wasn't present in. Yeah.
I was unaware that Colony was present, but I mean, you can do, the contract clarifies things, but you can have intermunicipal cooperation on the basis of an other than written contract.
Understood. I just didn't know if there was any liability to the city for not having that.
There's always liability to the city, no matter what you do.
Thank you.
Well, potential liability, I should say.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I think any other questions? Okay, unless there are any objections by the committee, I'd like to make a recommendation of support for Resolution 18 to the Finance Committee. Is there a motion to approve it? Is there a motion to approve?
Sure. Motion.
Second?
Second.
Okay, the motion has been approved. And we would like to get a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second?
And second.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you so much, gentlemen.
Thanks very
I really
much.
appreciate your presence here and your thorough answer to our questions. Thank you.
You're welcome. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. We'll be calling on you more often.
At this time, I think we'll take a 5-minute break before we begin the Finance Committee meeting.
Now we're.
Everyone, we will reconvene if you'll join us, please. We'll do our roll call. Finance Committee. Councilmember Di Lorenzo is absent due to death in the family. Councilmember Struber,
Present.
Councilmember McLaren,
Present.
Councilmember McKee,
Present.
Councilmember Favreau,
Present.
Councilmember Campbell Cohen, and Council President Steele is also present. So at this time of the evening, we have what's called the public forum, and we look forward to this. This is a time when you can speak on any agenda item that you may wish to. If you are not sure what the agenda items are, there should be agendas at the back of the room. At this time, I'd like to recognize Paul Rogers. You can sit or stand, whichever you're most comfortable. A sit? Sure, absolutely.
Can
And-
everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, and thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm sorry I'm late. I heard there was a.
Is it on the bottom? Let's-
They can hear it back there. Yeah.
Can you guys hear me in the back? Can you hear me?
Okay,
we go.
good.
There you
good.
go.
Yeah, I'm
Thank
sorry
you.
I'm late. I understand there was another meeting prior, so I apologize about that. I wasn't aware of that. So yeah, I'm here on behalf of the battery energy storage system that is being proposed here in Troy with Sole Source. I'm the fire expert. A little background about myself. I did 25 years in the fire service with the New York City Fire Department, working in a hazardous material unit. I was also involved with the first code recognizing battery energy storage and safety for the city of New York, and that code still exists today. Where New York City has not had one incident at all for all the battery energy storage systems that they have inside the city of New York. The reason I tell you that is because the state of New York just updated their code, and we were asked to make some recommendations on that. And what we did is we looked at the spirit of what the New York City Fire Department did, because they had such great success. Since 2018, they've had batteries inside of New York City that are supporting the grid with no incidents that have taken place at all. So what we did is we looked at the New York State code and we made recommendations based on what we did in the New York City code. And that was the basis of everything that was used around the world, the work that we had done. And we did about 5 years worth of work, working with the military, working with the Department of Energy, working with Underwriters Laboratory, a standard development organization, also working with the National Fire Protection Association, and putting out, as I said, one of the first codes, the first code to recognize the hazards of battery energy storage systems, and also working with the operations side and how the fire department should actually respond if there was an incident that takes place. But I'm also here to answer any questions that you may have in regards to concerns for the batteries on that end.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Could you discuss the process the state has gone through over the last several years to get to the fire code for BSS?
Sure. So going back again to my time in New York City Fire Department, we understood the need. We totally understood the need. They were closing the nuclear power plant just north of the city, which gave the New York City about 25% of their energy. So we knew we needed to get it done. And that's why it took us almost 5 years to actually do it, because we looked at safety. Safety was paramount, right? We wanted to make sure that we had safety parameters put in place. With that being said, the state now is in dire need too of storing energies. What happens is they're creating all this energy, and at nighttime when people are not using it, that energy basically goes to waste. So instead of wasting it now, they can actually put it into the batteries and store it. They can push that energy back into the grid when there's high demands, when everyone is waking up in the middle of the night and in the morning and turning on all their things and their business is coming alive and things of that sort, that the generating stations just don't have, they can't ramp up to actually get that high peak. So the batteries are there to support the grid, to actually push the energy back in there. So the state is now in a difficult spot putting that forward. But again, I do want to stay in my lane on fire safety. But the state has looked at, I worked with the state when they passed the very first one, code in 2020. They did an emergency adoption because they really wanted to get these projects moving. But a lot of people are fearful of the idea of, well, what happens if they were to go on fire? And there's a lot of misinformation that is out there that I want to clear up tonight that people may have, the public or yourselves. There was there was a campaign out there where the consumer products, the e-mobility bikes were going on fire. And a lot of people started associated those consumer products, those batteries in there, which are lithium ion based, but don't have the quality that we see in these grid support systems that we're looking at today. They don't have the standard of care. They don't have the remote operations that is constantly looking at the state of health of the batteries. So there's a lot of things that the consumer products do not have that we see inside the code. The code is very, very rigorous, very technical. And the state recognized that it's very technical. Like even some of your code officials, when they look at it, they may have a hard time understanding it. We're out there trying to teach the code officials on how to interpret the code. I'm doing work down in Nassau Coliseum in Long Island, where I'll be teaching code officials next Friday. There's a big fire seminar going on, and one of the things is codes. So the state has done and specifically NYSERDA has done a really good job on trying to get the information out there to the people. And some people are starting to come around, but there's a lot of people that are still concerned about it because of the misinformation that is out there. And we really, I'm here really to just kind of explain things to you, and also even to the fire department, to make sure that they understand if there was an event, how to actually handle an event. And the code, when we would making the recommendations, I'm an advocate for the fire service, right? During my time with the New York City Fire Department, I see the tremendous amount of loss of life for our fire service. So that's the last thing I want to see is something that is a firefighter losing their life as a result of the weak codes that are out there. So we really worked on that to make sure that the codes address the hazards associated with failures of batteries. And we made sure that the operations people, the people that would actually show up in the event of a fire, wanted to make sure that they were covered on that. So again, I'm here to answer any questions that you may have on your end.
Sure.
Councilmember Campbell Cohen.
Can you help us understand how some of the new policies that have come to bear over the last few years have improved occupational health and safety standards, not only like as a principle, but if there's any statistics with what few fires there have been?
Yeah, so there is a statistic out there by EPRI, Electric Power Research Institute. They document every failure around the world. And that's publicly available for people to take a look at. And they just did a statistic back in 2024, I believe it was, where they said there has been a 98% decrease of failures, because the large number that's going in, we're not seeing the failures as a result of the updated codes and standards that have been put in place. So I just wrote an article that was published in the Albany Times. Codes and standards are there to try to prevent fires. They don't eliminate them. They try to prevent them, and they reduce the risk. And the next thing is, if there is an event that takes place, they want to make sure that the fire is manageable. In my professional opinion, even what we have in New York City, we look at it from a point of view of, hey, this thing is going on fire. Can we manage it? And we feel very comfortable. I don't want to speak on behalf of the New York City Fire Department, but when I was there, we were very comfortable saying, yeah, if this thing were to actually fail, the operations people would be able to handle the incident and manage the incident.
And I guess from a last final question, from like an environmental health and safety standpoint, what would make a location more or less attractive for, mitigating the chance of harm when you're siting one of these facilities, and just kind of walking us through that.
Yeah, so the fire code does not get into any type of zoning.
Uh-huh.
It's very clear on that. They don't, because that's a home rule. That's up to you people to make that decision on the area. But there are some places within the city of New York that have them in industrial zones that actually back up to residential neighborhoods. So you do have private dwellings directly behind. You can throw a rock and hit them from where these things are set. But again, the New York City Fire Department feels very comfortable in the fact that if there was an event that took place, it could be managed. There is a report out there that the products of combustion of a fire that may take place are aligned with the products of combustion of a structural fire. So I do hear people talking about evacuations and, well, how far do you evacuate during a structural fire? Well, we don't evacuate during a structural fire. I said, well, that's your answer. We haven't seen anyone who has been impacted outside the perimeter of the fence adversely for a fire that has taken place within the state of New York here, and even in the state of California. Now, there have been reports of people, but we have not seen anyone who has tremendous impact as a result of that. So I do really want to clear the air on that. As long as everything is put in properly, installed properly, the guidelines of the code and the spirit of the code are followed, the regulatory infrastructure is sound. As a matter of fact, it's one of the strictest regulatory infrastructure that I've ever worked on during my 25 years with the New York City Fire Department. And the key to that is these battery energy storage systems, which look like these cabinets, they're kind of like shipping containers, just to give you a visual of what they would look like. And they're placed around there. And there's one of the things that needs to be done before it gets installed in the state of New York. And that is they have to do what they call destructive testing. Basically, put the system on fire and show that if this one cabinet were to go on fire, there should not be any propagation to the adjoining cabinets. And it's a very, very technical test. It's done by a national recognized testing laboratory. They have to certify that the test was done properly. And that is one of the criteria that the state of New York has in there. So if you don't do destructive testing, you can't come into the state of New York for these battery energy storage systems coming into the state of New York. And it's a very expensive test. As a matter of fact, we were involved in the New York City Fire Department helping create it. When we first created it, no one was passing the test. And we thought that we ruined the whole industry as a result of the rigorous testing that we had. But what it did is it forced OEM people to go back and take a look on how they're going to contain the fire in the box or in the container, and it wouldn't leave there. It forced them to go out and redevelop their energy storage systems to make them safer. And that's what we have today, because everyone's that target of we have to pass that test. They have to go back and re-engineer their systems as a result of that. And for those who are taking notes, that's a UL 9540A is the Underwriters Laboratory. 9540A is the testing methodology that needs to be performed. That's in the state code that says that any battery energy storage system has to go through that testing.
Councilmember McLaren?
I know you said you can't talk about the places that they could go, but is there a benefit to having it closer to residential in order to push the energy back out? Or can it be farther removed and still be as efficient?
Yeah, again, not in the fire code, but I think I can answer your question. Usually when these people come in to cite these things, they have to go where the need is. They have to go where the substation has the capacity to take the energy.
Okay.
So they do need to get into an area, and that limits their locations on where they can be.
Okay.
And that's why we see some of them in areas that may not be, what we really want. But again, I do feel, regardless of where, but I mean, eventually people here will have battery energy storage systems on the back of their houses. They already have them. They're already out there. People are using their cars as battery energy storage system. What they're doing is they're charging their cars. That's the battery, and they're pushing it back into their house. That's a mobile system. That thing is out, as opposed to being stationary where it's standing still. It's a mobile system that's out in the rain, the snow, it's hitting potholes and everything like that. And that same battery that's used in the car is being used in the actual stationary energy storage system that we're seeing that is supporting the grid out there, with no maintenance, no remote monitoring for the state of health of the battery, and the list goes on and on.
Could you speak to any additional resources that we would need to implement were we to have one of these facilities in our city?
It's one of the things that I used to encourage, now it's mandated in the code, is that they have to train the fire department. They have annual training for the fire department. That was put in the code as a mandate. So in order for them to actually be compliant to the code, they need to make sure that they have a training with the fire department. They'll also have a emergency response plan that is site specific. So it's not a generic emergency response plan. It's a site specific plan for each individual location that has a battery energy storage system. And then finally, one of the things that we did some inspection for the state, and we saw that there were some people that were putting them in and maybe they weren't visiting them. It was basically, we're trying to make sure that they don't set and forget. Like, okay, let me put it there. There's no one at the site, and forget about it. So we actually added into the code that there has to be inspections done of these things to make sure that these things are inspected. So if there's signage supposed to be there, when whoever that inspector is, that signage should be there. If there's fencing around it, that fencing is not compromised. If there is vegetation around there that's not being kept up, they have to make sure that's done. If there's snow, they need to plow to make sure that there is some sort of egress and access for the fire department in the event that there is a heavy snowstorm, which I think we're on our way to get a heavy snowstorm coming up soon. So.
Can you speak to the change in technology that we are experiencing, and what is the impact on safety and in particular the likelihood of fires?
Yeah, so there are other chemistries that are out there, but the lithium ion by far is the most dominant chemistry because of the idea that it can push energy very, very quickly back into the grid. So that's why we're seeing a lot of lithium ion batteries out there. So I'm sorry, your question, I missed it. I want to make sure I answer it.
Well, I understood that there was a major change in the technology, that that many of these projects were moving from lithium ion to perhaps sodium or something else. And I was just curious as to the impact of those new technologies on fire. And you may or may not be in a position to answer that. I don't know.
Yes.
But whether or not the new technologies are less likely or more likely to catch on fire, and what is the result? We as a municipality are concerned about the impact this would have on our fire service. Mm-hmm. And so if you could speak to that.
Yeah, great question. It's a two-part question as far as I'm concerned. First of all, the chemistry, as I said, lithium ion is the dominant. There are other chemistries that are out there. As a matter of fact, you already have battery energy storage in your area already. Every hospital has a backup battery inside of it. Any Verizon building that you have has energy inside of it, batteries from, in some cases, the full building is full of batteries. Most of those currently are lead acid based, which is a legacy battery. They were used in submarines in World War II. So they've been out there. The last thing that you want to see is a fire in a submarine when it's underneath the water. Today, submarines are using lithium ion. And that's where we delved in the New York City Fire Department when we were putting our code together. So as long as it's done properly, it's pretty safe. The second part of the question is making sure that the fire department is taken care of. Above and beyond what I said before, the fire department, the code also requires that a subject matter expert hazard support team, this was again modeled off of what the New York City Fire Department had in place, show up to the scene within a 4-hour time period. Now, they can be there before 4 hours, but 4 hours is the limitation. And that was a big deal to get that in there. We're the only ones in the country that have that requirement to have someone there to work with the fire department. So 2 things, the subject matter expert needs to be available within a 15-minute. It says immediately. Immediately in the code is up to 15 minutes. So it needs to be available by a phone number. And let's use a scenario, if the fire department's called to the scene as a result of a fire alarm that goes off at the location. And they don't see anything there. That's going to be the toughest challenge. What do we do next? Who do we speak to? So now there's a number out there that the fire department can call into. And one of the monitoring things that that these batteries have is what they call a BMS, battery management system. It's the eyes and ears and the brains of the actual system itself. It can look at the state of health of the batteries. It can actually shut things down before there's an event that takes place. But one of the things that we would teach the fire department is how to interpret the information coming from the battery energy, from the battery management system. So proof of concept was done just recently when we had this in New York City, where incident took place, was a false alarm, but the fire department staying there saying, well, what do we do next? But we were the subject matter experts on that. We called the dispatcher. We told them we didn't see anything on the battery management system. And the fire department was back in service within 5 minutes. That's a big deal to get them back in service. The moment you take a fire department out of service and they're doing an investigation, they don't know where to go, you just put a hole and a gap in your fire coverage area. So getting them back in service for nuisance alarms and things like that is key to put them back in service. And then if there was a fire, well, they can probably see it, right? They can see the flames coming out. There will be someone there to actually meet them. They're required to have someone there to meet them within that 4 hours. After the fire is not visible anymore, the fire department, we don't want to tie them up. They can do what they call a handoff to the subject matter expert, hazard support team. And then they would be responsible to do a fire watch. Instead of having the fire department do it, they would actually be the fire watch people. So if it did go on reignite, they can call the fire department back. I want to be very clear. They're not there to put the fire out. That's not their job. That's why we call it hazard support. They're not a fire remediation team. They're a hazard support team. So they're there to work with the fire department, take over the scene as the incident commander gives that command and hands the command over to them. And then if it were to actually reignite, they can call them back. But they're there to watch that, to make sure that there is no reignition, and also to start the decommissioning process to get those batteries out of there for any stranded energy that may still be there. But they're there to put a decommissioning plan, work with the fire department to get the batteries out in a safe manner according to the U.S. Department of Transportation guidelines.
And who is responsible for providing that expert?
The experts, it's responsible of the developer.
The developer.
Every developer, yeah. So anything that comes in after this is just giving you a rundown on some of the questions that you may need to ask them when they're there, when they come into your town, because you will see more than what we have here.
Any other questions?
Council President?
Council Member Favreau.
Yes. Backing up to the fire department, it feels like we're starting like at ground zero here. How long would it take to train our fire department and at what cost?
Great question. I always make a recommendation. And the code is not clear on this, but I make a recommendation. I'm going to tell the fire department this is what they're going to ask for. They're going to have training, right? Once we know we have the permit, I'd like to have them trained before the actual battery energy systems show up, even though they're not hooked up and they can still go on fire, right? So we want them trained before any of the the cabinets show up itself. So this way, even though they're not operating yet, they at least have an understanding of failures. Because when they do deliver them here, they're delivered at a low state of charge, 30% state of charge as per the regulations. But there still is energy in there. The 30% state of charge is a very safe thing, but things happen, right? We want to make sure that the fire department is trained and the subject matter expert is available prior to them coming up. So not just on when they're operating, we want to have them available prior to them actually going online.
Council President.
And is there a cost to that training? Or typically, is it just like one visit out to the site? Or I'm just trying to estimate how long that might take.
Yeah, and again, we work with the fire chief on that one and saying, okay, who's your first two companies here? Who's going to be the ones that are going to be responding to it? Do you want a PowerPoint presentation? Do you want a walkthrough of the site? Obviously, if they're not on the scene yet, then they're probably going to have a PowerPoint because they won't have that walkthrough at that time. But it's annual. It's annual training.
Council President.
Councilmember McKee.
The FDNY code, is that accessible online and would
It
we
is,
have
yeah.
access to that?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, just
The
go to
FDNY
the-
code is, so you'll see the code that says 608. And
Okay.
there is a rule attached to that. Rule is like an executive order for it, right?
Mhm.
And a lot of information is going to be in the rule 608.
Okay. And that's on your website? or
Yeah,
on
and you
their
can see
website?
there's an alignment with the New York City code and the state code.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you so much. You've been a wealth of information and we really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks.
And
Thanks for your patience.
Sorry for the misunderstanding of timing, but we're glad you made it.
Great.
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you.
So we'll resume our public forum. Anyone who wishes to speak on any agenda item, we would ask that you come forward. Please give your name and place of residence.
Good evening, City Council President, to the
Good
City
evening.
Council members. My name is Reverend Victor Patterson. I am, I live in Lansingburg. I have the honor and privilege of pastoring Fifth Avenue AME Zion Church. And I bring that up tonight because on the resolution, it does give a knowledge to African-American history because of the city administration, but also because of the city president put it on the ballot. I wanted to kind of share some sentiments tonight. If we look around the whole United States of America, we can see what type of culture that we are in. From ICE, from DEI getting wiped away, from Jim Crow getting ready to take place. No matter if we want to call it, we can't drink out the same water fountains. That we might be able to still drink out the same water fountains, but there's a lot of minorities and not just African American minorities that are facing harsh penalties. In 1856, a famous abolitionist named by Frederick Douglass, who was a prominent member of the African Methodist Episcopal Zion Church, which I pastor in, which is 196 here in the city of Troy, the first oldest in the Rensselaer County, the second oldest Black church in the whole state capital area for African American churches. He asks us a question. The question that he asks is, what is United States for a slave? That's the question that he had to toll with to say, how is America still for African Americans? How is America still good for minorities? How is America still good for ISIS and things of that nature? And although that we are acknowledging Black History Month, my stripe is acknowledging good enough? Is acknowledging good enough? Yes, we do need more African Americans in our community to stand up and fight the good fight, like our brother said, get in good trouble. But we also need allies in this city of Troy. And since I've been here for 3 years, has become one of those allies. And I'm not going anywhere. Until they call my name, I will be here. I love Troy. I will be rooted in Troy. I graduated from a school called Langston University with my bachelor's degree. I have a doctorate degree, but I have graduated from a school called Langston University. And why I bring that up is in Oklahoma. There's a guy named E.P. McCabe. Yeah, I might not never heard of him, but he's a citizen of Troy, New York, born a Black man here in Troy, New York. They left New York, Troy, to go down to Oklahoma and started a whole city called Langston University, as well as a Black university called Langston University. This is the stuff that Troy needs to be proud about. The church that I pastor, currently, the first Black state trooper is a member of my church who plays our piano every Sunday, Miss Pamela Sharp. That's here in Troy. Harriet Tubman, another African American who is significant to the AME Zion Church. James Varick, our first bishop, was the one who was the abolitionist that made sure that New York was ending of slavery. Another one that we might want to consider that's from Troy, New York, is William Jewell Kelly, a prominent member of Fifth Avenue AME Zion Church. He was the first Black architect in the whole state of New York, here in Troy, New York. And so the question is, if they were successful because they have allies, isn't it making sense that in 2026, we still need those allies? And so I'm asking you who are on the council, I'm asking the administration not to just use us for tokens anymore, but use us because you need us, not because you need us to vote for you, but because we work better together. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Victor. I'm wondering if you would be willing to help us amend the resolution to include those individuals that you mentioned, to give it some historical context.
Absolutely.
That would be wonderful.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes.
Good evening, everyone. Stephen Maples, South Troy. Just wanted to quickly just say that I am a resident of South Troy, where I understand the potential BESS system is potentially need to be cited, and I just want to express that I'm very excited about it. I can't wait for it to be there. And to offer just a bit more context, the EPA in its release about this technology, when you consider the incidents, the number of fire incidents per gigawatt hour, it rounds down to zero. So it's the EPA finds it to be very safe. You heard the gentleman. And I also just want to point out specifically about since the fire in Warwick was mentioned, several media reports talk about how the issue here was the operator was acting outside of the law. So I don't know that a moratorium does anything one way or the other. Honestly, I'm pretty sort of agnostic to whether or not a moratorium happens, but it feels with the information at hand, not particularly necessary. It seems like let's just crack on with getting the regulations in place. But just my 2 cents on that. Thank you.
My name is Eric Spinner. Yes, just what we needed, a battery energy storage system that nobody in the city would have the skills or predilection to ensure its safety. But I stand before you tonight to oppose the nomination of Ira Silverman. as counsel to the city council. This man is so conflicted, my time would not permit me to list all of those conflicts. So I'll summarize. Number one, his own schedule would not permit him to perform this job unless this council is now condoning state government corruption, because a full-time government employee would not have any time at all to defend litigation when necessary. For instance, if this council goes forward with the Troy Tenant Protection Act, which would include good cause eviction, possibly the Emergency Tenant Protection Act, the city attorney is not going to defend your legislation, which would mean that the city council's attorney would have to plead themselves by motion into each and every case that the administration would not defend vigorously. So when is he going to do that if he's working 8:30 to 4:30?
Eric, I just want to mention that that item is not on our agenda this evening.
Well,
So,
it is. It was listed on the agenda on the website that you're deciding to apportion $50,000.
A nomination, that individual's name is not on the agenda. I just wanted to clarify for the public that is not being acted upon tonight.
Well, then that's good. Maybe I can head it off. We're still talking about this issue. And I want to make sure, then we'll leave the person, let me phrase it this way then. We don't need an attorney for the city council who is in large part responsible for the very code and charter regulations that this council has indicated a predilection to change. We don't want an attorney that already served the city and disserved the tenants of the city already by not including in the code or recommending the inclusion in the code, the very items that we need and that I hope this council passes. Now, this applies to any council that this esteemed body might appoint. I'm sure Madam Council President and others are aware that I was an integral part in pushing forward the notion that this council should have an attorney after the debacle of the Harbor Point Gardens hearings, which were conducted without a counsel. I also participated in the long into the evening discussions that this council had with regards to the agreement that was made, whereby 2 budget line items were introduced, one each for $25,000 for a council for the Democrat at that time majority and the Republican minority. Now, unless someone on this city council has suddenly figured out a solemn King Solomon-like way to split the baby, hiring one council is one man, one vote, one salary. Whether you have 4 members of the council that are Democrats, 5 members of the council, 6, or as currently exists, 7, the man is performing one job. And as everyone's aware, tenant protection enactments are going to cost money. There's going to be a cost, whether it's this much or this much, it's going to cost money. And the tenants, as well as other taxpayers in this city, do not want to see our money gratuitously handed to one individual when in essence that money is for two individuals. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Does anyone else wish to address the council?
Hi, hi, am I on the mic?
I think so.
Okay, sorry, it's hard to tell. Francis Sweet, from South Troy. I just wanted to respond to a couple of things that were going on in the committees. I think anything that we do to upgrade our electrical grid would be a benefit to the residents of Troy and the entire country. It's privately owned and pretty much a lowest common denominator of fixing it. So I think that having a local battery system would probably be really helpful to that. I'm not an expert on that, but the expert seems really reassuring. So, and I'm glad that, but I am glad that the mayor finally found something that she doesn't want to rush through. And if they need 6 months to get up to snuff, then fine, but I don't think this should be used as a delay tactic. I think that reporting back every 2 months was a great idea, to see how progress is going on that. Because it seems like evacuating half the city was a bit of an exaggeration, according to the expert's testimony on that. I also want to say that I'm glad at the council's response to resident concerns about the multiple actions on the 15th. I've seen those concerns aired online by people, and I'm glad that it was taken up by multiple council members in response to that, those concerns. And I also do want to say, I work with Troy Indivisible, and we recently had a rally on Monday that the Troy PD did assist with. They did a sweep and kept a perimeter, and had offered that to us. So that was really helpful, and I'm glad that they are willing to work with community members on different things, because the concern about things in Minneapolis was brought up. So I will testify that they have worked well with community groups in the past. They have done things that are also not so great, but that's not what's on the table right now. But I just wanted to address those different things that came up in committee, and also just very glad that there are committees. So thank you.
Thank you, Francis.
Hi.
Hi.
We're duetting. I'm Kendra Lord. I'm Crossout. And we are residents of 4th Street in Troy. So we would like to discuss the raid that happened literally right next door to us.
I'd like to, say that the comments from the police officers tonight felt a little more PR than reality, because we woke up that morning at 5 to explosion sounds, and then we saw the armored vehicle in question and about 20 armored militarized police force. I don't think they made any real attempt to get the residents to come outside before they already went in. The door went down with a battering ram. There were flashbangs. This has all been confirmed and admitted. And what we saw them take care of was a family, a mother and 3 young children who were taken from the building. All of those guns pointed. And no information given to any other residents. Our downstairs neighbor tried to, just open the window and ask what was going on, was threatened by one of the cops.
I know other neighbors have also experienced that. It seemed like they were not aware that there were children in the residence when that was brought up.
Yeah, and judging from their response that it would have been brought into consideration, having known that there were children present. This was done at 5 a.m. on a school day, on a work day, and they started the event with a flashbang grenade. And it's a shame that I can't ask this question, but I'm wondering if the police chief himself or his family has ever woken up to a flashbang grenade, because it is pretty horrifying to experience in a residential neighborhood. And then to look out your front window and essentially see an army for your next door neighbors, who the only experience you have with them are pleasantries and watching the children play in the snow and play basketball out back. It was, and I also want to speak to the professionalism that the chief spoke about, because I will forever be haunted by the laughing of the officers after they pulled our neighbors out of their home at gunpoint. They were laughing. They were a number of the officers were on their phones. It was the most surreal experience in my life.
I'm from Minneapolis, actually, it's my hometown. So this is obviously, a lot to happen outside, the front door, as well as what's going on back home. But it is just, I think we need to, I'm actually hoping we can all work together to ensure something like Minneapolis doesn't happen here, and that we take firm stances. We also make sure that we're holding our officers accountable for their actions. And, we take their statements at face value and make sure that there's more, on the ground, residents being spoken to, that there's, just more responsibility being taken.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really liked the council's point to maybe readdress the citizens after maybe something has happened. Maybe there's not something that they can do beforehand if they're surprising a suspect, but it just, from a personal standpoint, living in a quiet residential neighborhood, to wake up to something like that, knowing that your neighbors are a mother and 3 children, and see that kind of response, felt like terror and felt like a response that was completely unnecessary for the circumstances in context.
They also made no arrests from that raid that we saw.
We spoke to our neighbors afterwards. They let them sit in their car for several hours.
Wouldn't let them go to the bathroom, wouldn't let them get food. We tried to check in on them. They wouldn't let the kids go to the bathroom. They wouldn't let them, we couldn't bring them anything.
Yeah. And again, we went and spoke to our neighbors. They didn't have any answers, and they did not arrest them. They were not under arrest because they were allowed to sit in their personal vehicle, and then they were allowed back in their home. So I don't know if when they were speaking earlier, they were blanketing, these raids that were performed, that those arrests were made at other raids, and they're just kind of looping them all together under one resolution. But it did not appear that anything was taken from the home or any arrests were made for our next door neighbors.
Yeah, all their statements sound great on paper and in committee meetings, but not based on anything that we saw. It seemed like an extremely strong military operation that had no results, no information, and frankly was just terrifying.
Yeah. There was also a drone involved, the militarized vehicle, automatic weapons that basically every officer had, and an officer was mounted on top of the armored vehicle with a large caliber weapon. I'm not an expert, so I don't know what they are. They were terrifying. And dogs, night vision goggles. They called it protective equipment. It just looked like terror to us and menacing in a residential working class neighborhood, in which we have never felt unsafe for 1 second until we looked out our window and saw guns pointed at our neighbors. Just
and
really
like a
wanted
tank.
a tank.
For what?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Evening, I'm James Rath. I live at 398 William Street, which is directly behind 398 and 396 Fourth. I want to echo a lot of what my neighbors have just said. I would also describe that event as pretty terrifying. Also should preface just that obviously everybody wants to live in a safe neighborhood. I appreciate the comments that the police administration made and recognize that this was led by state police. But I agree that it does sound a lot different from the experience that my family had. I know that also two of my other neighbors were here earlier and listened to the police testimony, but are not here. So yeah, just to share my account of what I experienced. I woke up around 5 a.m. To the sound of flashbangs, 2 or 3 loud bangs going off. Got out of bed, looked out the window. My bedroom window looks right out into the neighbor's yard. Also have never really seen anything suspicious or weird or dangerous. Not only in my neighbor's yard, but really in our community in general. Mostly just middle school age children playing basketball is pretty much the only thing I ever see going on in that backyard. So when I looked out the window, I saw 6 individuals wearing body armor. 4 of them had large assault rifles pointed at the house. There was a green dot on the back of the house. One of them had a police dog. The other one was kind of standing around with a pistol. The four that I mentioned had night vision goggles on top of their helmets. They all had helmets with like flashlights and stuff. Again, not a tactical expert here, but it did seem excessive. It also seemed extremely expensive. I would be very surprised if that kit did not cost about $10,000 or more on each of those individuals. So I feel like it's very strange to live in a community where you're consistently told there's no money to fix potholes or make infrastructure upgrades or fix lead pipes or plant trees or do any of the good things that we all need and want in our communities. And then you look outside and you see militarized police engaging with your neighbors. I live behind the house, so I was spared from what my neighbors saw. I didn't see the kids taken out with zip ties on their hands, but yeah, I agree that that's terrifying. And I wish that we had a police force that could, take a leadership role to prevent excessive force from happening more proactively, rather than allowing the state police force to come into our communities and do something like that. I also questioned, if any of those people have ever experienced anything like that. Any of the police officers that were there carrying out this raid had ever woken up to an experience like that. After I looked out the window and opened my window and asked what was going on, they really wouldn't say much. They just said active investigation, go back inside. And another flashbang went off right while my window was open while I was looking out. So, I think it's really important to highlight that when excessive force is used, it's not really the people who are doing wrong or the criminals or whoever they're after that's negatively impacted, right? It's everybody else. It's me and my neighbors and children who live in the neighborhood. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, James.
Good evening, City Council. My name's Jeff Ward. I am the Troy Fire UFA president. I'm here tonight to tell you that we are in full support of the administration to put a moratorium on this battery storage facilities for 6 months. There's a lot of unanswered questions. There's a lot of concerns in the fire service on our end. There's a lot of training that needs to be done on this to understand what we need to do. Paul, you're a great expert. I've seen some of your podcasts. Very good job. Some questions or some obviously things that I wanted to bring to light. You did say possible up to a 4-hour response. You guys all live in Troy. You've seen us here many times, overworked, overwhelmed. Our call volume is through the roof. For us to have companies sit on a scene for 4 hours, what other calls are we not able to respond to? Okay. The IAFF, which is the National Association of Firefighters, urges to kind of pump the brakes on this. Everybody have a good, strong look at it, understand what's behind it, make sure everybody's trained on it, and we all know what the possibilities are. If there's a fire there, that we're all safe going to these conditions, okay? I do have a friend of mine that's actually in the battery storage division. He works for a battery storage company in Austin, Texas. We've been out talking. He'd show me on his phone, you know, because he can monitor a lot of these battery stations. I've seen doors blow off the front of some of these places. And he's like, oh, I don't know what happened. I know another firefighter up in Stillwater. They have a battery storage facility up there. They've been called there a couple times. One of the problems they're running into is their ownership of the battery storage facility has changed 3 times in the past year. How do we chase people to make sure that they're doing the proper things to the battery storages? Let's pump the brakes on this. Let's take the 6-month moratorium. Let's do some training and talk about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Does anyone else wish to address the council? Okay, well, I want to thank you all for your comments. I had called a special meeting tonight to consider rescinding the $6 million bond due to many improper issues. In a call with bond counsel and financial advisors this week, we learned, unbeknownst to us, that the bond sale is already underway and that rescission would not be in the best interests of the city at this time. So the resolution has been withdrawn, but the misrepresentations remain. The bond resolution adopted in December could only be used towards a restaurant, not the other park amenities that were pitched to the council at that time. That phone call with bond counsel and fiscal advisors should have happened weeks ago when I requested such, but for weeks I was stonewalled. Going forward, this council needs free and access to both bond counsel and fiscal advisors, as well as department heads, to fulfill the duties we were elected to perform. Furthermore, I would ask that in the best interests of our city, we start acting like grown-ups and tone down name calling. Let's use this opportunity to work together to build a year-round restaurant at Fair Park that will meet the needs of both the golf and hockey communities. Let's consider using the tent perhaps another season while we demolish and rebuild on the former Park Pub site. As Jeff mentioned earlier, let's pump the brakes. Let's take our time and do this right. Councilmember Campbell Cohen.
Yeah, there's a handful of concerns that council members have raised about the bond resolution that was passed on December 30th at a special meeting by the outgoing council. You know, I'm going to let other council members speak for themselves. I was focusing on technical deficiencies, of which there at least appear to be 2, one more clearly than the other. Whenever a bond goes out, there's something called an estoppel notice that gets published in the paper of record. The estoppel notice that went out for this particular bond resolution was signed by the city clerk, at least in name on the estoppel notice, on January 9th, 2026, with the former city clerk's name on it. It is true, it's in the paper of record, Mayor, and I'll ask that you please not speak while I am talking.
Mayor, please.
You're not invited.
No, Mayor. This is his
You're
opportunity.
not invited to speak while I'm speaking.
No. This is the
I'd like
council.
to finish speaking first.
I am here to clarify.
It's in the paper of record. If anybody would like a copy of the PDF, which is a scanned copy of the paper of record, which any of you can obtain yourselves, also by going to the library, but I can send it to you as well. It's just there. It is a statement of fact. How it got there, I do not know. It could be a good reason. It could be a very bad reason. What I know is that it's there. And this is obviously not what was happening on January 9th, 2026.
If I may.
No, you may not. My goodness, lady.
But you don't want the church.
We would like him to finish his comments, and we would like to go forward with our meeting. This is a city council meeting. Thank you.
The second issue is the seeker determination associated with the bond resolution. The seeker determination says that it is an unclassified use or action. We don't have to get into the weeds here, but just as a statement of fact, that is not accurate. And I consulted with several state officials, a state agency, people who plan for a living, people who are city engineers, and all of them came to the same conclusion. There are additional concerns about the environmental assessment form associated with that bond resolution, as well as general concerns about what bond resolutions pertain to what environmental assessment firms, and so on. And the final point that I will make, especially when you are going out and hearing sort of explosive rhetoric about what is happening or isn't happening here, is that words have a different meaning in a legal context than in a colloquial one. And there are two words in particular that I think have been used to great effect to make this seem more dire than maybe it is. The bond council has asked that we withdraw this, and seems like we're going to honor that. But when people are talking about sort of worst case scenarios and the rescission in particular, the word shop or sell has a different meaning colloquially than it does legally. Sell, I think most of us, when we experience that word, we're talking about like selling something at a store, or whereas in a bonding context, sell is more like close. And the word close is what has not happened here. The bonds have not closed. Transactions have not occurred. There has been a promise of transactions, which isn't nothing, but it's different. The other word that lawyers, I feel, have been using to make this seem much more dramatic than it really is the word could, which in a legal context allows the possibility of something in the same way that I could be drafted by the New York Jets. It could happen. And I'm still hoping, but it probably won't. And most of the administration's ways of making this seem so dire has been predicated on confusion. I feel deliberate, but maybe not. Confusion around the words sell and could. And I just want to make that clear. Hopefully it's reflected well in the public record.
Well,
Councilmember McKee.
sure. And I was very, very concerned about the lack of information about the debt limit. And during the meeting on December 30th, when asked, I don't know if it was by Councilmember Vera, Council President Sue Steele asked about the debt limit, and the answer was kind of a flippant answer that, oh, we have plenty of a cushion, and without any specifics. We need that information to do our fiduciary responsibility and to make sure that we're not going into debt that we can't afford. And we asked to speak to bond counsel and fiscal advisors to get that information, and we were stonewalled, and we didn't get it until after we felt we had to do something about stopping this. And we decided to go with the rescission. And then they allowed us to speak to the bond counsel and fiscal advisors, and we got our answers. So I just want to make it clear that everything we did here was to perform our fiduciary responsibility as responsible council members and working for the citizens of Troy. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, we'll move on to our agenda, ordinances. Ordinance 2, ordinance authorizing settlement of claim to wit Hassan Muradi versus the City of Troy, New York, Troy City Court, Small Claims Court, Councilmember McLaren, Council President Steele, at the request of the administration. This ordinance was undertaken by the Law Committee previously. Do you have any recommendation, Councilmember McLaren?
Yes, I would recommend that we approve the ordinance based on the conversation that happened during committee.
So you're moving this forward?
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Councilmember Favreau?
I can't.
Okay, so we have, it's been moved by Councilmember Favreau with a second by Councilmember McLaren. Discussion on the ordinance. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ordinance is adopted unanimously, 6-0. Ordinance 3, ordinance placing a temporary 6-month moratorium on the development, construction, or establishment of battery energy storage systems, BESS, in the city of Troy. Councilmember McLaren, at the request of the administration. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Councilmember McKee, is there a second?
Second.
Councilmember McLaren. This too went to Science and Technology prior to the meeting. Do you have a recommendation from your committee?
Yes. As the administration and the expert from ESRG mentioned, batteries already exist in Troy in various ways. It sounds like the Troy Fire Department has yet to go through the training to properly address those batteries. And while much of the rest of the state has been actively working to incorporate plans, laws, training, and zoning to address the new technologies available to better support the needs of residents, we haven't seen that in Troy quite yet. So my recommendation would be to amend this ordinance to a 3-month moratorium, at which time we can review the progress towards preparedness.
So you're putting this in the form of a motion to amend?
Yes.
3 months. We have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made by Councilmember Struber with a second by Councilmember McKee to amend it to a 3-month moratorium. Discussion on the amendment.
Council President.
Councilmember McLaren.
I think paramount to anything, I think we need to be concerned about safety. And I think our first responders who would be dealing with issues at a BESS need to be the ones feeling comfortable with it. Is it Paul?
Yes.
Paul, you mentioned that, that the New York City Fire Department, that the storage systems that were put in place there, they were all comfortable with that. I think that is, I think that's a minimum that we need to make sure our first responders are comfortable with it. So to me, and I'm hoping that the administration is not using the 6 months as a way to squash this. I'm hoping that we will have good dialogue, that there will be great public input, and that eventually we will all be comfortable with something like this. But to me, I think that the 6 months is not unreasonable. So I guess I'm asking, is the intention to want to move forward in 3 months, or to see where we are and then perhaps extend it another 3 months?
My intention was to review progress in 3 months.
Okay.
Could this be accomplished if we remain with the 6-month moratorium, but we monitor it throughout that 6-month timeframe?
So amending to include a requirement of check-in?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm wondering if I'm hearing what Councilmember McLaren is saying. I heard our folks here. It's regrettable that we have not stepped up and begun the due diligence that we should have, but we haven't. And so I'm really concerned that whether or not it can be done in 3 months, personally.
Yes, and again, my intention is to review progress in 3 months.
Yeah.
So if the rest of council is more comfortable amending to keep the 6-month moratorium, but to add a required check-in, I'm open to that.
Would you be willing to withdraw your amendment then?
Yes.
Okay. Would you like to offer another amendment?
Motion to amend the ordinance to include a required 3-month check-in of progress towards preparedness.
3 months or 2 months? 2 months, 2 months, 2 months?
Yeah, 222. I like that.
Okay, so we have a motion to have the 6-month moratorium, but with 2-month check-ins.
Yes.
Throughout that period of time. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Councilmember McKee seconds. Discussion on that amendment. I like it.
Council President.
Councilmember Favreau.
I think part of the discussion that we didn't have earlier is how long does this process usually take from the time a company proposes coming to Troy? My only hesitation with this amendment is that we give the administration 6 months, and then at the end of that 6 months, either it happens or it doesn't. And then if it does happen, at that point, an organization approaches us to come to Troy. Does that process take another 6 months to a year? I don't know that process. Safety is paramount. I completely agree. But are we just pushing this off and not bringing those benefits to our residents? That's just something I don't know.
Councilmember Cohen, is it okay if I speak?
That's not necessary, Mayor.
That was very rude, but council member.
Yes, it was.
It was.
On your part.
Stating
Agreed.
that it's going to depend on the legislation. So depending what's in the code will depend the time frame. So give us time, work on the legislation. Additionally, we have over 130 some odd firefighters. We have a full force. To train them is going to take time. So that's all we're asking for here is time. And we agreed to come back to the council and give updates as necessary. So in answer to your question, in terms of the implementation, will depend on the legislation, what's in the code. Do they have to go before zoning? We're recommending potentially a special use permit, but let's see what we come up with. It's not going to be a cookie cutter, as I stated, similar to the city of Rensselaer. We're different, our demographics, our geography, et cetera. So we're going to design the legislation that fits the needs of the people of Troy. And I appreciate your concern. Obviously, we're putting public safety before profit, et cetera. That's why we're coming to you. Like I said, we're still learning more. Others are still learning more. Obviously, Warwick, they approved it. They got caught 3 fires, 1 horrific fire, toxins in the air right now. We're looking at safety before profits, environment, quality of life before profits. So
Thank you.
saying that,
Thank you.
Council President, it will depend on what the legislation looks like. So when we come back to the council, we can talk about timeframe, things to that nature, but it'll depend on what we put in the code for these vests. Okay. Thanks.
I think the 2-month amendment will help us stay on track. I would hope so. I certainly would not want to ban this in any way. Councilmember McKee.
I'm just wondering if we can put into the amendment that we have to see at least some tangible progress every 2 months toward the 6-month goal.
Well, we need to vote on. Let's vote on the amendment first, and then we'll amend the amendment. Or can we assume that tangible progress should be?
Well, I think we should state
Okay,
that.
all right. We have an amendment on the floor made by Councilmember Struber, seconded by Councilmember McKee to implement 2-month updates to monitor the progress towards the end of the moratorium. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That amendment is approved 6-0. Now, how would you like to amend further?
That every 2 months, we see tangible progress toward the goal of having
Preparedness.
Yeah, preparedness at the end of the 6-month period.
So that the updates should indicate tangible progress.
Yeah,
towards-
every 2 months, there has to be additional progress.
We have a motion on the floor by Councilmember McKee. Is there a second?
Second.
Councilmember Struber. Discussion on the amendment.
Could we use the time that we have between now and the next regular meeting to define what
In progress.
progress is or tangible progress
Sure.
for the purposes of that amendment? Okay.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That amendment is also adopted 6-0. So on our amended ordinance. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ordinance 3 is adopted as amended 6-0. Resolutions. Resolution authorized 18, resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into an intermunicipal agreement
Wait, there's one more ordinance.
with, I'm sorry?
What about 4?
Oh, I'm sorry. I missed 4. Gee, it was my ordinance too. Ordinance 4, ordinance transferring funds within the 2026 general fund by Council President Steele. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Councilmember McLaren, is there a second?
Second.
Councilmember Struber. Discussion on the ordinance. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ordinance 4 is adopted 6-0. Now we're moving on to resolutions, and resolution 18, resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into an intermunicipal agreement with the town of Colony for mutual provision of police tactical team services. Councilmember McKee, Council President Steele, at the request of the administration. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Councilmember
she can't.
McKee. You can't because you're.
Motion.
Councilmember McLaren, and second by Councilmember McKee. This too was entertained in committee prior to this meeting. Councilmember McKee, do you have a recommendation?
Yes, we actually voted to support this resolution.
Okay, thank you. Is there any discussion on Resolution 18?
I believe that this, as presented, needs an amendment, correct? Because
Okay.
as presented, it is retroactive January 2025, and it should read as of January 2026.
Okay, so we have a motion to amend the dates of the attachment. Is that, do we amend the attachments?
It would be
It's
amending the
the
resolution
contract,
itself
the
The
resolution.
agreement?
Yeah.
and the now therefore be it resolved paragraph.
It's also in the resolved.
So you amend the resolution to
Reflect.
direct that the contract be amended so that it, I presume so, it'll only run 1 year from January 1st, 2026 through 12/31/26. Then I'll present that to Colony.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
Councilmember Struber? On the amendment, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The amendment is adopted, 6-0. On the amended resolution, discussion?
Sure.
Councilmember Campbell Cohen.
I appreciate the timeline and, it's a longstanding agreement. And so I'm sure the expectation is that it's always coming back. And I have no problem with that at all. But I just ask for the one for the upcoming year, if it's possible to get it in advance of the new year, just because I'm concerned about how much weight authorizing something that has happened in the past holds. And it's fine for like file keeping, so on. I'm sure it has no real implications like today, but just in principle.
No, it's sort of, in law, we call that nunc pro tunc now for then, and it just means that we're retroactively authorizing. But I certainly will get you the agreement for 2027 as soon as I get it. Okay.
Perfect.
Thank you. Okay, did we vote on that? I don't
No.
know. All in favor of Resolution 18?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution is adopted 6-0. Resolution 19. Resolution proclaiming the month of February 2026 as Black History Month in the city of Troy, New York. Council President Steele, at the request of the administration. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Councilmember McLaren,
Second.
seconded by Councilmember Favreau.
And are we going
This
to
will
amend
be,
that?
this will be amended after I consult with Victor, and we will enact it at our February meeting. Any other discussion on the resolution?
I just want to say how much I appreciate you coming up to speak about allyship, because it's true. We talk about it in a lot of other situations, but it is something that needs to happen more. It's one thing to say that you support diversity and DEI and things like that, but it is another to be a true ally. And so I appreciate you, bringing those words forward, and hopefully all of us can set out to do that.
Ditto. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution 19 is adopted 6-0. Resolution 20. Resolution commemorating the 30th anniversary of Ozzy Osbourne's concert in Troy. Councilmember McLaren. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Councilmember Struber, second. I'll second it. Discussion on the resolution.
Council President.
Councilmember McLaren.
So I know there's a lot of chuckling about this, and I can be very honest and say that on January 27th of 1996, I was not an Ozzy Osbourne fan. I was a stay-at-home mom with 3 small children, and not at all interested in the heavy metal scene. But I have come to appreciate some of his music. I've also come to appreciate, you can't bring it up without mentioning the fact that, he did some not so great things through his life, but he rehabilitated himself. And so I think that's important to point out. So again, I am not a metalhead, but I respect metalheads, and know several. And like I said, became a fan of Ozzy. And I do know that almost daily at school, we sing Crazy Train. So, so thank you for recognizing this.
Any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We have commemorated Ozzy unanimously. At this point of the evening, we've finished our agenda. If anyone wishes to speak on any topic other than an agenda item, we'd appreciate hearing from you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Matthew Ryan, I'm the Vice President of Troy Uniform Firefighters. I think just a little bit of clarification on our stance with these battery storage systems. We are a fully trained fire department. It's not a training issue per se. It is an infrastructure and manpower issue. As the lieutenant will say, how many members would you say respond on an initial box alarm in New York City? 40, 50? 40. We get 18. It's a serious issue for us manpower wise if there is a fire at one of these facilities. And that is the primary concern of ours, right? I don't particularly care about the economic side of these things. I care about the safety of my members and the public, and that is my only motivation. Otherwise, we wouldn't be speaking in support one way or the other. So I just think that needs to be clarified with you guys. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Does anyone else wish to speak to the council? Hearing none, seeing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Councilmember McLaren, second.
Second.
Councilmember Campbell Cohen, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned.